Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Chef Kabui. I'm an organic chef, also sometimes indigenous chef. I was born in Kenya. I've been living in the US for the last 3 decades. I came here to go to college, and I also went to culinary school after finishing graduate school. And food is something that's very important to me. And I've been working around issues of food justice. And today, I'm very, very excited to be working with Boma around the issues of climate change, something that's also very, very dear to my heart. Boma Project works with women and families in northern Kenya, which include the Samburu, the Turkana, and other communities that are in that part of the country. Women who are getting assistance to start small businesses so that they can be able to live meaningful lives and also send their children to school. Climate change is something that's very, very close to my heart because I grew up in the village for about 10 years. And I go back to Kenya about every year, and I've seen firsthand how climate change has influenced people for the worse. People, especially in developing countries, who have had the least to do with the contributing to the climate change. For that reason, I find the work that I do really impactful in both countries, not only Kenya, but also in the US. While climate change is affecting women and men and families in all parts of the world, the West is not immune. America is a powerful country, but it's also suffering from the consequences of climate change. We've seen from the floods, wildfires in California that have always been in the news for the last 2 months, and that happens just about every year. And for that reason, I think time is here that we all have to do our part in order to do what we can to stem the climate change. Just for context, I thought that I'll bring 2 items that maybe can help to make this event a little bit more memorable, if you want to say. And I brought a map. This is a map of Kenya. And the Turkana and the northern region and Samburu live along this area. And this map shows the soil, the exploratory soil map of Kenya. It shows you the type of soils that we have in Kenya. So in this region, as you can tell, you don't have very, very rich soil in the beginning. So climate change makes a region that's, okay. So that's it. Let's do one more time.
Climate change.
Yes. Right? So yeah, so climate change makes an area with very poor soil that's already difficult to grow food extremely more difficult for the people there to be able to get a livelihood through growing food or keeping their animals. And that's why climate change is such a serious issue. So you have a context. The next thing I want to bring is a cloth that's Kenyan. That's a Kenyan cloth. And this is what I consider to be the chef coat for my family and people from my region. The women would, every time I see my mother wrap this around her neck, her waist, I knew some serious work was about to happen. And the interesting thing is that every woman worth her own weight or worth anything carried one of this everywhere she traveled to in her bag. Because sometimes I've seen in a public taxi a woman heading to the doctor, to the maternity to deliver a baby, and she started delivering the baby in the vehicle. So what the women would do, they start the vehicle, they'll go on the side of the street, they'll hold the same chef coat around the woman. One will put the woman, one of these on the ground, the woman will lay on it. The other woman will surround her with this, and it will be a maternity ward. So how cool is that? The chef coat among the indigenous people is multi-purpose, is also sustainable, all right? So you have a chef coat that you can use for other things as well. So for today, we're going to do something small. What I can do on my part is share with you about the kind of cuisine that I think is most helpful for both your health and as well as for the environment, and especially when we're doing it for a good cause to help the women who are also trying to deal with the consequences of climate change. And my cuisine, which is part of what I'm going to be sharing today, is called Afrofuturistic Conscious Cuisine. I'll be telling you more why I named the cuisine Afrofuturistic Conscious Cuisine in the process, but I just want to make an introduction. And before we cook, we are going to have a video that our Boma is going to play so that you can be more acquainted with the work that they're doing. You can be able to see for yourself firsthand. And then after that, remember that the recipe I'll be preparing will be here as well at the bottom, will be attached at the website also, and you can be able to prepare it at your own home. Then if you have any questions, you can ask those towards the end when we have the Q&A. Thank you very much. Let's watch the video.
Ilskiyaalee fagootaa achi jira kan jirkaan ammoo bisa cufanii waltiin dhiyaatu armaan durallee neetwaakii hin jirtu neetwaakiin hin jirkaan edmiin natti faan sila waan dassa fiixata waan dassa haan hin qabne ana akka malee wanni sun faan akka malee qalbitii sun buute an turra dhagaye hojjaa gisee garii ka hojjaa waan wayii bitatti faan qabne akka malee amtu dhageetta. Maishaan durii gaaf Bomaan hin jirkaan dukkoolee deenii nyaanna deenii taallee nurra hidhanii baadha deenii taan nurra hidhan kaan gaddeemna akkasitti ta'e guyyaa deenii argan haan baafne guyyaa kaaniin ammoo beessa kaashin qabdu deenii namni siheen hin jiru maishaan akka nu heega babbaa'u. Amma hojjatee nurra hidhan kaa fulaa nyaataniif hin jirtu yagari agobbo bulane ga bulane amsi lamma kana maishaan gaafas maishaan ak malee ngumu ni Bomaan na barsiifte ak malee gorsnaa hennite deeni nyaadha ammoo baafadha ak waan keessanii qabadha nuun jette Bomaan ammoo unni cuftii galatu waaqate waan hedduu Garbomma hana anak malee garbomma hana Bomaan hana gamma amma akka malee irra Bomaan irra baradhee yoon Bomaan akka malee wana barsiiftee khawfi masomo laqaachi baaddo amma akka malee masomo Bomaan irra argadhee yoon duri wamma durata waan masomo hanaayu waan ijoolleetti soomtu faayu seenee amma mooji Bomaan dhuftee naani ilmaatti herregaan irra guyyu issoomte hojii argatte addachate wal qarqaarte Hawal qarqaartaan amma nalleen akka malee irra gammadaayyoo maishaa sun duratti argaayyo gaaf durii Bomaan hin jirre mooyye inni sullee mataallee hin jirtu ijoolleeti isi soofisee bakka hojii masoomoo jechuun miishoo qabaatti isi miishoon naabaas fedhe yaadassa qabaaf intaltii yaadeen qabu isi soomtee oskuura obbaaftee gaddeebite na qarqaarte ofillee qarqaarte fedha. Irree waan Bomaan naa hin irkanaan sii soomte duratti hin deemte kabisaa isiin maisha dassa heetteettu akka malee fedha akka malee galateeffadha Bomaan galatooma Bomaa.
All right, so we are going to share the ingredients that we are going to use for this recipe. But before I do that, it's important that I tell you the rationale that I use to come up with all the recipes, this being just one of them, and I hope that we'll share more in the future. Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine is a cuisine that is designed to address the current and the future issues that we as humans expect to face in light of climate change. Afrofuturistic means African inspired. Futuristic is the food that people who intend to be here or healthy or move into the future in a healthy and a conscious way, knowing that their footprint is having an impact on what they both leave behind and what they experience now. So climate change is not a problem that's going to happen in the future. It will happen in the future, but it's also affecting us now. We know all about the floods, the wildfires that are ravaging different places. We know about the extreme weather, high temperatures, erratic weather conditions where farmers who depend on rain are suffering huge losses because the rains are very erratic. They are not predictable, so they don't come up in time. And that is the rationale behind Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine. So it's a mindful eating. We are being mindful of ourselves, we are being mindful of others, we are being mindful of the environment. We are being mindful of others because by eating healthy, you are keeping toxic chemicals out of the system that damages the bees, other insects, the environment, other animals, as well as the water. You know, a lot of the chemicals that we use to grow food that are toxic, they also intoxicate the water and eventually they intoxicate us. So that's the rationale behind Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine, and I'll be talking more and more about different aspects of the cuisine, but that's just a general overview. So for the interest of time, we're going to look at the ingredients that we have, and and then we can proceed to the next thing. The first ingredient, which is the one I'm most excited about, is an ingredient that is very, very commonly used, is very, very sustainably grown in Kenya. And interestingly enough, it's grown here too. So this is one of the ingredients that was very, very familiar to me when I moved here to the States. Millet is a very easy grain to grow. It's one that's grown without being genetically modified, and it doesn't require a lot of nutrients to grow. It grows on all types of soils. And it's very easy to grow, it's very easy to use, and it's very easy to digest. I've only put a purple basil on it, but it's yellow. I thought it would be important for me to show you how the millet looks like before it's cooked, so that if you decide to go buy it, then you won't be too confused about it. You can very easily recognize it, okay? So that's the millet, that's how it looks, okay? And it looks yellow because it's hulled. So if you're in Africa and other parts of the world, it looks gray when it has the husk on it before it's dehulled. But once you dehull it, it looks yellow. You measure 1 cup of millet with 2 cups of water. You bring the water to a boil, put the millet in, turn the fire to low medium, and then wait for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on whether you're using gas or you're using electricity for your cooking. You know the millet is done when all the water is gone. You'll know when all the water is gone. It's very easy to tell. You start whispering. In fact, that's why I say food talks to you. Even if you're blind, a lot of things you can cook. When all the water is gone, the millet sounds like it's hissing, you know, like asking for water. That's one way. The second way is to stick something like a fork through it or a knife through it. And when you pull it out, you can see that it looks muddy. If it doesn't look muddy or liquidy on the side, then you know the millet is done. So the next ingredient we're going to look at is mung beans. Mung beans is a type of legume that the Kenyans use quite often. It's very, very commonly grown in Kenya. And a few of these ingredients, this being the first one, is an influence of our interaction with Indians. The West got a lot of spices from India. That's how Columbus got here. So that's another thing to know, that even the basis of this country was the search of spices in their bid of the Spanish to improve their cuisine. So here is another benefit that we gained from interacting with the Indians who came to Kenya to build the railway, by the way. So they brought the mung beans, and what will you do with them? You soak them overnight. This is a very important, sustainable practice that Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine implements. I try to find ways of cooking with the least amount of energy. When I soak the mung beans overnight, I can cook these beans in less than 7 minutes. I can cook these mung beans in less than 10 minutes. If they are soaked and I bring the water to a boil, it takes about 5 minutes and the mung beans are done. I just set them to the side with the water, give them another 10 minutes, or 5 or 10 minutes, and then pour the water out. And I have one, very easy, beans that are easy to digest and also very nutritious, and also use very limited amount of energy instead of the traditional method where I would put the mung beans and cook them for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's a lot of extra energy we don't need to use. The next ingredient we are going to look at is acorn squash. Acorn squash is a fall season. I also cook in season. You know, Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine uses ingredients that are in season. So one of the things that we have in the region where I am in the fall is squash. Squash are very abundant in the fall. Pumpkin squash. In fact, we are heading towards Halloween, and that's why the sign of Halloween, at least one of it, is a pumpkin. So anyway, so this is a squash, and you can replace this with any pumpkin. I grew up using pumpkins, and pumpkins was something that was almost like an aftercrop. Whenever we grow the first crop, my mother would throw pumpkin seeds so that when we harvest the first crop, the pumpkins will cover the land. Instead of weeding, we'll have pumpkins. So it was also a style of permaculture. It's a way of controlling weeds, but also bringing some benefit. So it's a very sustainable way of farming. So that's diced acorn squash. The next ingredient that we have is shredded beets. Shredded beets, just purple beet, that's all, right? And these grow very well. They are easy to grow. They're also very nutritious. I typically first concentrate on preparing food that's sustainable first. If you eat food that's sustainably grown, a variety of it, and know the right foods to eat, then you don't have to worry about too much about nutrition. Sometimes nutrition can be oversold. You know, oh, this has vitamin C, okay? But if you eat as though you're not if you're as a healthy person, that's the easiest way I find to enjoy food. So enjoy good foods, enjoy a variety of it, and that's why I included beets. And it's also nice color, so it makes the food look good. So it's something good looking, but also has good nutrients. The next ingredient we are going to look at is rutabaga. Rutabaga is something that grows on the ground, just like beets. So I have two things here, including onions and garlic, that are root vegetables. So the next root vegetable I wanted to use for this recipe is rutabaga. Rutabaga is very easy to grow. It's very, very sumptuous. It's a very good replacement for potatoes, you know, if you can make fries with it, and it's very, very versatile. There's so many things you can use with it. So, shredded rutabaga. I chose rutabaga for another reason, that I'm not trying to make just cuisine that was grown in Africa. Because of this fusion of African, South, and Kenyan experience, I try to use ingredients in balance. I try to use some of the ingredients that I have here, some of the ingredients that I had in Kenya, to come up with the best synthesis of sort. So that's why I also wanted to use something that's also American. You know, we're not trying to replicate just one food, because the people in Kenya ate that food or grew the kind of food they grew because that's what they had there. My grandmother grew sweet potatoes because that's all she had. You know, if she had rutabaga, my mother and my parents were very, very eclectic eaters, you know, so they were always trying to improve the food. So one of the ways I talk about decolonizing the food is being free in the way we think about food and having a focus. So my focus is not to eat the food that was eaten in the past, but to eat the food that will make me healthy, and that's also good for the environment, and that's also good for the future, okay? So that's why I included rutabaga for sure. So the next ingredient that we have is purple onion, and I mix it with chives, right? When you're cooking sustainably, you don't have to use ingredients like it's law. It's not the law, right? Recipes, even this recipe that I share is it's just a general guidance. If you like something that's hot, just add more pepper. In fact, you'll notice that in the recipe. I say flavor according to your taste, okay? So you're not cooking for me, you're not cooking for Boma, you're cooking for yourselves. And the most important person to please ease yourself. So cook in the way that is most pleasing to you. So for me, I do have purple onion. I love chives. They are also in season because we're in the fall, and that's why I included those. Also, as a way of also teaching that recipes don't have to be static. You can change them the way you want, okay? So those are the onions. The next ingredient that I want to share here is the first herb that my mother used when I was growing up. There is not a single time in all the time that I've spent, first 10 years that I spent with my mother, that my mother did not have cilantro on the farm. So we always had cilantro. And in fact, for a long time, I just thought cilantro was what everybody uses to cook until I went to other people's house and they didn't use cilantro. But all our cooking, we use cilantro in one thing or the other. And it's very, very commonly used in Kenya today. So that's cilantro, and it's also very nutritious as well. I want to share one interesting aspect about cilantro. Cilantro is one of the few things that I know, especially herbs, that people are genetically wired to either like or not like. So some people just don't like cilantro. They can't stand the taste of it. In fact, when at some of my events, people ask me, does the food have cilantro? If I say yes, they say, give me something else that doesn't have cilantro. So I'm conscious about it. And when I cook, I only put it in certain dishes. And I have other dishes that don't have cilantro. In this particular one, I'm putting in one of the things that we're going to cook. The next ingredient that I'm going to be sharing with you is tamarind. Tamarind looks like a bean. It's like a shell. If you press it, it exposes a dark brown rubbery bean inside that you soak in hot water, and then you massage it, and you're able to get something like this, okay? Tamarind is grown widely. It grows as a tree, a very big tree, and it was introduced by the Arabs in the coast, and is mostly grown in the coastal region in Africa. And is a very versatile spice as well. It's very versatile because it's used for making dishes, but also making a drink. You can make a drink with it, and it's very, very common. For the benefit of somebody who might not be very familiar with it, I don't want to use terms that might be confusing. So let me make the distinction between a herb and a spice. A herb is typically leaves that are used to flavor food or drink. A spice is something, a plant, whose bark or seeds are used to flavor the food. So for the herb is the leaves. For the spice is seeds or the bark, okay? And that's the distinction. The next ingredient that we'll be using here are hibiscus flowers. We're going to make a drink with the hibiscus flowers. And the way you make the tea is just boil water, soak the leaves for about the flowers for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to add ginger to it. And we mash the ginger, and then we get the liquid out of the ginger. That's liquid juice from the fresh ginger, okay? So we're going to mix that, and then we're going to add honey to it. And then that's become the drink to go along with our food. The next ingredient that we're going to use is minced garlic mixed with fresh rosemary. So the rosemary is also minced. The next ingredient that we're going to use is pea shoots. Peas are very common in Kenya as well, but we normally don't eat them as shoots. The first place I ate pea shoots was when I came to the US. So that's something I want to use for garnishing the food. The next ingredient that we're going to use in this cooking is coconut milk. And coconut milk is something that is very easy to make. It's made from the fresh coconut. And the coconut tree is very, very common among, especially the coastal region in Kenya, as well as other parts of the world, but we're speaking specifically to Kenya. And is one of the most eclectic trees that I know. The coconut tree, one, produces coconut that we know. So by harvesting coconut, we get coconut coir that we use as a medium for growing transplants, and that it makes growing transplants very, very healthy, because part of the ingredients that I use, some of the coir that the ingredient that coir replaces is mined from the lakes. So by not mining from the lakes, we keep our sea life more healthier. So coconut produces coir for our transplants. Then the shell itself can make bowls. Then the coconut is eaten just as a coconut, as a snack. It's dried to eat a dried snack. You can dry it and use it for 3 years. It produces coconut milk. It produces coconut wine, which is very easy to make. All you do is cut a young coconut at the tip that attaches the tree to the fruit, and then you put a container right next to the tip, and it drips wine, and it only takes 1 day. Once it drips, the next day it's fermented enough, and people drink it as wine. Then the tree itself has leaves that are used for roofing. Then the tree itself produces great wood that has beautiful grain for making furniture. And a coconut can last for 70 years. So it's a very, very sustainable product to use. And there is one coconut tree for more than one coconut tree for every living person. So coconuts are in plenty. So if you want to drink milk, have your glass of coconut. So we will be using coconut milk. And it's not very difficult to make. Maybe one of these classes we can make fresh coconut, go through the whole process of making coconut. I have harissa, which is a Moroccan spice that I use whenever I'm doing my African cooking. The next one is cloves, which are very, very well known in the East African region. Then we have cumin, which is a very common spice for my cooking. We have nutmeg. Nutmeg, very interesting spice. The other name for nutmeg is it's considered the most blood-soaked spice in the world. Of all the other spices, no spice was fought over between the Dutch, the Arabs, and the other Europeans for them to get control of what is called the Spice Island. They call it Spice Island because of nutmeg, all right? So nutmeg is very important, and I have much respect every time I use nutmeg, and I use curry. The other spice I don't have here that I use quite often in my African cooking is berbere. Berbere, that's another Moroccan spice. So I think we have salt. I don't need to introduce that. It's sea salt. I'm using Manuka honey. Manuka honey it comes from Australia, comes from one plant, just one plant called Manuka. And that's what we're going to use to sweeten our drink today. We've fired our burners and we are ready to cook. So the first thing that you'll notice about my cooking is I don't fire the oil. I only use liquid. I use the liquid to cook, okay? The first thing we did was add the coconut milk in one, add the tamarind in the other one. And immediately we are going to split just a little garlic in there, and a rosemary, and the same thing on the next one. Immediately while that is cooked, we just need to turn it for just a few minutes. And then split the onions, and then onion on this side. Notice that the base is very, very similar, and it just depends on the flavor that we want, okay? And because the cooking is vegan, I use the same spot. I use the same spoon. And I'm cooking for myself. So just use the same spoon. I always keep some extra liquid. You don't use all the liquid. You don't use all the coconut milk. You put them in stages, okay? So it takes about 1 or 2 minutes essentially what we are doing, we are creating the foundation of our dish. How well you do in the beginning determines a lot how the end product will come out. So you want to, just like a house, you want a good foundation. So you want to work on the flavors. You want to work on the flavors and get the flavors just right, okay? So the onions and the garlic and the rosemary are cooked. It's about a minute. The next ingredient we use is the acorn squash. Why do I start with the acorn squash? I start with the acorn squash because the acorn squash takes the longest to cook. Of all the ingredients that I have, most of them are pre-cooked, like the mung beans and the millet, they are pre-cooked. But the acorns squash are pretty big, so they'll take a little while. And that's why I put only part of the liquid in there, because I'll have quite a bit of cooking to do, okay? Add a little bit. You just don't want it to stick, okay? The next thing we add after 1 minute, 1 minute of cooking, will be the beets. We add the beets. You stir it for about periodically. So you have the beets cooking in the coconut milk. There you have the rutabaga. The rutabaga will not take long, but the goal of the rutabaga is to create a sauce. Ultimately, you want to increase the viscosity because you don't want all the acorn squash to cook down to a paste. So instead, because you want good viscosity, you use shredded rutabaga. Okay. While that's cooking, you can tell how it looks like. You can tell how it's looking like. Okay. I say cooking is only 3 things. And in my view, 3 things and 3 things only. Cooking is water, getting water, flavor, and water, flavor, and heat. Those are the things. So you put everything I put in here has either flavor, has water, and the only thing heat is doing is being a catalyst to mix those or to break it down to change its form. So that's all you're doing, okay? So if you look, the water, there's a race between getting the water out of the ingredients that I'm putting and the amount of heat you're applying. So a lot of times when the food starts sticking, most people put water, but you don't have to put water. You can start with putting salt. Salt is the easiest way to get extra water out of the food that you're cooking, right? And I'll put the measurement so you don't have to worry about guessing how much salt you use. So I'll put the actual measurements of salt, and you can cook according to how much. You can put salt according to your own dietary needs or just to your taste, okay? So we're constantly cooking. If you notice after we added the salt, the food is not sticking nearly as much, okay? So I'll put the last ingredients of the tamarind. Stir that. Stir that. Okay. And this is a very easy cuisine or recipe to cook. You're cooking at the same time, so you're saving a lot of time. Right. Now, after you've used all the coconut milk and tamarind, you can use water from there, you see, because you've essentially flavored your food now, okay? So now, I can use a spoon. There's a spoon. All right. That's cumin. Just a little bit of cloves. Cloves is very, very powerful, very, very strong. So I don't need nearly as much. Just a tidbit in the coconut. And stir that. Water. Okay. In the next 5 minutes or so, the acorn squash should be ready. So the number one mistake chefs make is to taste food without cooking, to cook food without tasting. So you have to taste your food as you go along, okay? Okay. Okay. So I think you can press hard. You can press. I can tell the acorn squash is done. So maybe 1 more minute just to make sure that sometimes you have bigger pieces. Some pieces are bigger than others. So an extra minute will not hurt. While that is cooking, I'm going to use some cilantro in there. And then I'm going to use this, a spoon. I can even add the purple basil there. Okay. And that's all you have to do is mix them. And take 1 minute. 1 minute of cooking, 2 minutes max. Because the liquid is hot and the grain is cooked, so all you're doing is warming it up, warming it. And that, because you had a lot of liquid, all the hot liquid gets in the grain, and it doesn't take but 1 minute or 2 minutes, and the dish is warm, right? And you know that the grain have soaked all the liquid. Once you start having discoloration like this, you can tell in the back, okay? Okay. So you can tell it's sticky. So there's no liquid, okay? There's no liquid. So all we gotta do is turn it up, turn it down. On the acorn, we just have to keep it from sticking. We put the mung beans. You stir it. So we turn that off because it's already done. And all you gotta do is turn it, you see. You can tell it's sticking. You see it's sticking. But nothing is burning. You don't wanna burn anything, okay? And you wanna just wait when it's just about to stick. And that tells you all the water is gone and the food is ready. So you can cover it. If you want us to serve it right away, we can cover it and it will still be hot, okay? Okay. Okay. So this is done as well. So as you can tell, it's a dish that takes very, very short time to cook. All right. 2 ways you can serve it. If some people like food with a lot of soup, some people like it dry. So we are going to serve it both ways. Okay. All right. That's a very easy recipe to make. It's very nutritious and I find it to be quite tasty. So you're enjoying good food without causing any damage to the environment or to your health. Okay? So that's one way we can make it. I have a wonderful plate here. This plate that was made by my friend right here in North Carolina. Is a plate that was being made with clay and put in a kiln. So I love this plate. So if I was cooking for a guest, then as part of a fine dining dish, this is what I would do. You can use a glass like this. And you have something like that. Then same thing. All right. So that's simple dish, simple way that we showed, or you can share, and it's a nice, healthy dish. Now, we haven't forgotten, if you want to use oil, you use oil at the end. Okay? Okay. Or you put the oil. Once you start cooking, you put the oil in there, okay? If you want to put a little oil, you put a little oil before you serve it. So both ways, so you can do it this way or the other one. You want to make it a little bit more fancy, you can use, I have some watermelon radish. So watermelon radish, okay? And you can see, I don't know whether you can see it properly, but you can just use the watermelon radish. You can use the watermelon radish too, just on the top of the pea shoots, okay? And it's both nutritious and healthy, okay? Now, we're done with the dish. You serve your guest. Now we go to the tea. So you have water. We go to the tea. This is just water in a jug that we have left. This is a hibiscus flower. We boil it in water, hot water. We let it sit. A sieve. And if you don't have a sieve, I'll tell you what you can use in the end. Again, this just goes with flavor. How much water how much hibiscus tea you want to put, that's a choice. That's an individual choice. Use your taste buds and then figure out which taste you have. Same thing with ginger. Some people like a lot of ginger. Some people don't like a lot of ginger. And just add there. Then we add honey. Okay, we add honey. We add honey to your taste. Something else you can use depending on where you are, because we know we have people from all over the world. So you can use honey. That's local honey. Or you can use something that I also like to use sometimes is maple syrup, because maple is something that is becoming more and more sustainably grown. It's not something that has to be harvested over. There's no tilling of the land, so they just get the maple from the trees that are already existing. And so they don't use chemicals to grow the trees a lot of times, unless they have to spray them. But it's something that is, I find, a little bit more or better if you want a sweetener. If you can drink without sugar, without honey, that's an individual choice, okay? But all you have to do is get a glass and you serve it. And therefore, you have the dish. It has dropped, but you have the dish and you have the drink. So enjoy for the environment, for Boma Project. Have a healthy Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine and do good. We'll be able to answer questions, any questions that you have in the Q&A. But before I go, Boma is going to play another short video briefly. And after that, we can have the Q&A. As I conclude this section, I would also like to let you know about the Boma annual appeal. Please visit their website. Make whatever support you can to Boma in order to support the women of the northern Kenya who are doing a fabulous job with the small loans that they are getting, starting successful businesses. All those information is on their website. You can look at the success rate. The Kenyan government is also supporting the initiative that Boma has been working on, and hopefully we can make it a success. Thank you very much, and see you at the Q&A after you watch the video. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for your patience.
Anche Jenigano, Kanahizin, Ayla. Egajartin Buma Argat Dasa. Maishan Karalza, Turi Magna Maskin Nanan, then the Yalan of the Watan. I look the Ramp of Magagoya, Shile would only Bagan. Tagola Boma Argana would on Bag. Kita sekolah ya, kita bikin kita itu caranya ayam itu aja kita sekolah pak malam mau tahu pada aja sekolah pak aku dasar soalnya malam mau tahu soalnya tanah tak kau tuh